Hi, welcome back. I'm sorry there was a small technical glitch. Always the problem with doing so many things online. But what I was saying was that this bazaar, the Disabling Differences Bazaar, is indeed special to us in many ways. Our partner Muttama Devaya has been a disability rights activist right through her working career. And from the day that we set up Funky Rainbow, 7.5 years ago, she has always wanted to make everything we do very, very inclusive. And we are thankful that this wonderful influence has come into our scope of things so many years later. I do remember right from the time that we set up our website, she has wanted to make it, accessible to people with different abilities. And yes, I mean, it's odd that this year, which has been hit by COVID, and basically our traveling bookshop, the wheels of our traveling children's bookshop have literally come to a grinding halt. In a sense, a disability for us that we're not able to go here, there, everywhere that the way we would do earlier. It's just remarkable that in this year is when we have discovered the ability to be inclusive. And so it is with great happiness and pride that we all say that we have an Indian Sign Language interpreter joining us in this, bazaar. And as you can see on your screens, she is interpreting everything that we say for audiences with different abilities and different needs. We need to really shout out to, first and foremost, to Muttama for making this possible, for bringing this into our consciousness, and for insisting that it has got to be done, because a more inclusive world is certainly a better and a brighter world. We would also like to shout out, say a big thank you to the Diversity and Equal Opportunity Center, that is DEOC, and specifically Rama Krishnamachari, who has been extremely supportive of our initiative to include Indian Sign Language interpretation as part of our bazaar. DEOC is an organization that was established in 2007 and provides consulting, research, and training services to corporates, educational institutions, industry bodies, development organizations, and the government, to create an inclusive environment. Really, a big shout out goes to you, DEOC, for making this possible, for bringing our two wonderful, sign language interpreters, Manisha and Riya, to join us on the show today. They're going to take turns interpreting what we are saying, and we really do want to say a big thank you to these young ladies for making this possible for Funky Rainbow. All the books in our bazaar, today feature, protagonists with different abilities. And, we have, as always, books that straddle the gamut from books for the youngest readers, going up to young adults. Many of you are aware that this is the Funky Rainbow website, www.funkyrainbow.com, has a tab called the Bazaar. Please do click on that tab, and there'll be a drop down menu, which, and one of the things there would be disability. One of the headers there would be disability. You can click on that to find all the books that have gone into our disability bazaar. We're not going to be able to speak about all of them. We're working with multiple people on this show, so we probably are going to be able to recommend far fewer books than we normally do. So I do urge every one of you to log into the website and check out the wide range of books that we have included in our Disabling Differences Bazaar. We do have our 2020 offer on at the moment. This is valid from November 20th to December 20th. And, this is for everybody who picks up books above 2,000 rupees. You are eligible for 20% discount. Please do pick up these books, and if you feel that they match their reading requirements. So, like I said, I mean, we have a wonderful guest joining us later in the show, and I will introduce her when it's closer to the time to do that. But I will start off with my first recommendation for the day. But just before that, I want to say, because of the wonderful work that Mutama has been doing all these years, she absolutely wanted me to showcase two books. This one, Human Rights of Persons with Disabilities, something that she has used over the years. Why she wanted me to showcase this was that you can see it's entirely done in braille. I mean, this is one of the earliest books brought out by the Human Rights Law Network, about rights for people with disabilities. And as you can see, the entire book has been done in Braille. Now, over the years, she has been talking to us about her mentor, Javed Abidi, and we would like to send a huge shout out to the late Javed Abidi for absolutely opening up the world of possibilities for people with different abilities. I mean, I can tell you that I have heard so much about him, so much about the pioneering work that he has done in this space at the Human Rights Law Network, that I really wish, at the NCPED, and that I really wish I had had an opportunity to meet him. Jyoti Narayan, you say this is absolutely fantabulous. Love this. Looking forward to every minute of this session. We do too. We can't tell you how happy we are as a team that we finally managed to do an inclusive session, with an interpreter working with us. I mean, like I said, when I started, Avyukt Nair, you're saying, good morning, Vidya Auntie. Absolutely a pleasure to see you here, Avyukt Nair. Like I said, when I started off, we do want to make all our work completely inclusive, and to develop a website that is inclusive, to develop facilities by which we can use social media so it's inclusive. We would love it if people came forward and supported us in whatever way possible to make this reality happen. Again, before I start off with my recommendations, a big shout out to DEOC for making this possible, as well as to Muttama Devaya for making us believe that inclusion is the best way, that everything that we do should be completely inclusive. With that, I begin, with my first recommendation. I have a giant tome that she wanted me to show you. And this is, mind you, not the recommendation, my first recommendation for the day, but it is a book very dear to Muttama on disability and the law. And as you can see, wow, that is going to take some amount of reading. The thing is, there's been pioneering work done in this space by so many people, and it's only right that we carry this work forward in our small ways in different spaces, so we create a wonderfully inclusive world. It's better for us to know that the world is made up of diverse peoples, because that's when the world becomes a nicer, a more exciting space. Dr. Ramna Atri, you say good morning. Very, very good morning to you. Sunila Kulkarni says, cheers for Muttama, awesome girl. We absolutely agree. It couldn't be better. We couldn't have had a better partner at Funky Rainbow. So my first recommendation for the day is a brand new book. I know it's been a couple of weeks since this one came out, called When Adil Speaks, Words Dance. It's written and illustrated by the wonderfully talented Lavanya Karthik, and it is a special one to start the bazaar with, basically, because, well, maybe I should tell you a bit about the story before I tell you what makes it a special one to start the bazaar with. Well, there's a young boy called Adil, and everybody wants to be friends with Adil. He's a cheerful, happy, tree climbing, book reading, drawing and cartooning young boy. So straight away in that, in that portrayal, Lavanya Karthik has tried to move away from stereotypes of disabled people being rather quiet. In this book, Adil is anything but quiet. In fact, he has a friend who is very, very quiet, and this cheerful child absolutely tries to draw his friend out, and and they bond together over art. Now, what is special about the book, when which is, like I said, illustrated as well by Lavanya Karthik. I'm going to show you a couple of pages of the inside pages. Now, the thing is, everybody wants to be friends with Adil, but how do you start a conversation with someone when their words dance to a music that you and I cannot hear or understand? Why is it so significant for us to start the bazaar with this book? And this page should give it away to you. Well, Adil uses sign language, Indian sign language, to communicate. And, it is just so poignant that we have a book that is dismantling stereotypes, that is, making, differences, showcasing a difference, saying that we have absolutely nothing to be worried about difference. We have to come forward and embrace it. Really, hats off to Lavanya Karthik for creating this warm tale of empathy, inclusivity, and the superpower of friendship. The thing is, it's published by Penguin and priced at 199 rupees. We do know that Lavanya has a special interest. She, created a book just prior to this called Cat Come Back, which we haven't included in this bazaar, of course. But this was created for, before the book got published by Karadi, it was created for the National Tactile Book Competition, and which was run by the Chetna Charitable Trust. And Lavanya, so talented, so creative, actually created the book for them in Braille, this wonderful accordion book, literally taking a needle and thread and making, those grooves that Braille requires. So obviously she's really interested in this. And the book, of course, went on published by Karadi, as this wonderful accordion book. So Lavanya Karthik, with her heart absolutely in the right place, but also a very, very good sensibility for understanding diverse abilities. So when Adil speaks, words dance. It's a must-read book, and we're so honored that we have started with a book that that we have a book in the Indian children's context that focuses on Indian Sign Language, and how people use it. Our next recommendation for the day is this wonderful book that many of you possibly have already read or know of, called Wings to Fly. Soumya Rajendran, who has written it, and Arun Kaushik, who has illustrated it, tell the story of a remarkable, young, disabled athlete called Malti Hola. What determination, what a spirit. Malti Hola is just, as a young Malti Hola is just like any other little girl. She wants to run after hens and chicks. She wants to catch ripe mangoes when they fall off the trees. But how much can she do on a wheelchair? Well, she can, because she is determined, and she is determined not to let her disability come in the way. So Malti Hola goes on to become a Olympic athlete, basically. And this story is, which is full of warmth, full of cheer, full, which so beautifully explains her determination and untiring spirit to, be the best at what she wants to do. This one, published by Tulika, is priced at 175 rupees, and we would recommend this for 5+ year olds. I'm sorry, I didn't mention the age group for Adil. It's got very, very simple text. As you can see, very, very little text on the pages and large, lovely illustrations. We think that it works for, if you're reading it to a young child, 4 up, you could read. Maybe if a child's reading on, her own, 5+ is what we would recommend it for. We have, because we're going to be, short of time today, we are going to recommend books in a set of, as sort of clutches of them. And our next clutch, which focuses on children with physical disabilities, or protagonists and characters with physical disabilities. I'm going to show you a clutch of them. This is one of our favorites. Archana Atri, you say nerds love the page where Malti is competing with others in wheelchairs. Indeed, so right and so true to see that indomitable spirit of all of them at the Olympics. This one, features a young girl called Abba, and what we absolutely love, written by Sunaina Ali and illustrated by Debasmita Das Gupta, is that this is the first page of the book. It says nothing. It's a Sunday, and Abba's wondering how the day is going to pan out. And you can just see, in that illustration, if you notice it, Abba has a crutch. That's it. No telling you anything else about, her. There is just the fact that Abba has a crutch, but she's just like any other girl who's looking forward to a wonderful Sunday with her parents. It's a slim, beautiful book, again, meant for the youngest of readers, because as you can see, very little text and wonderful illustrations. This one, published by Katha, is priced at 95 rupees. There's Catch That Cat, which comes in next, which is another book that we absolutely love, by Tarini Vishwanath and illustrated by Nancy Raj, because this is the story of the naughtiest girl in school called Dip Dip. Now, what's about Dip Dip? She is so entirely naughty that she's whizzing through the corridors of school, just like other children. She's playing with the monkeys through the windows, and she's starting all the food fights at school over lunch. Just one thing, Dip Dip is in a wheelchair, right? And does that change anything of what Dip Dip wants when she is in school? Does that change anything that she wants to do? Now, when her cat climbs up the tree, Kapi, the cat, climbs up the tree, what is the only thing that Dip Dip is going to do to get her down? My God, such lovely little stories that celebrate the exuberance of the human, of young children, of just the way they want to be and the things that they want to do. And yet at the same time, being inclusive, bringing in people of diverse abilities into our children's books. I know, there's the next one that we want to recommend, Neil on Wheels, another wonderful book about two siblings. And, the story is narrated from the perspective of the younger sibling, saying that my big brother Neil has wheels. This one too, written by Lavanya Karthik and illustrated by Habib Ali. We really tell you, Lavanya Karthik has her heart in the right place, and we're so glad that she has these sensitive, wonderful books put out for young readers, for all of us, actually. Now, this one is a lovely fantasy story about how Neil's wheelchair transforms itself to fight dragons, monsters, and scare away all the creatures of the night that go bump under the bed. We love the way this fantasy pans out. And this book, published by Duckbill, of course, you realize in the course of the story that the superpower, the super wheels, are actually Neil's wheelchair. Such a wonderful book, Meal on Wheels, published by Duckbill in association with the Parag Trust, priced at 299 rupees, meant for the youngest readers. I know we have to switch, to the next ISL, interpreter. But before we do, I'm going to quickly show you three other books that, wonderful books that feature protagonists with physical disabilities. This one from Pratham, about 9-year-old Chuskit who wants to go to school and wants to make friends, wants to learn math, wants to play games, but is unable to do it because she's on a wheelchair. But it just takes one friend, Abdul, a young boy called Abdul, to change all that for Chuskit. There is Why Are You Afraid to Hold My Hand, which is possibly one of the earliest books, that feature protagonists with, disabilities. This one by Sheila Dheer, done in fantastic poster style, is literally this story of a child asking all of us, just because he's different or just because she's different, why are we afraid to hold their hand? Why are we afraid to do things with them? And in this book, of course, the child is afflicted by cerebral palsy, and society, being, just, otherizing, people like this, when there's absolutely no reason to do that whatsoever. It's a sensitive and absolutely wonderful book that focuses on a protagonist with disability, and actually tells us, change your attitude, because the only thing in life that is a disability is a bad attitude. This one, finally, before Manisha goes off screen, is a lovely counting book called 10 by Shefali Jain. And it's just a simple counting book. You can see that there are wonderful, simple pictures with just single lines of text. And lo and behold, as we count and come into one of the pages, you do see a character. You see one of the children, with a crutch. It is, such the wide-eyed curiosity of children. Archana Atri, you're saying we discussed this in the context of increasing accessibility for persons with limited mobility, particularly so many real chuskits. Absolutely, absolutely, that all the chuskits of the world should have access to everything that other children do, and we must do what we can to facilitate that inclusion. This wonderful book, like I said, just gently weaving in, a child with a crutch, but all children with the same wide-eyed wonder, with the same curiosity, on the street, counting. I mean, a book of counting that recreates the wonder of childhood. This one is meant for 2+ year olds and priced at 65 rupees. Thank you, Manisha. We'll ask, Riya to come on screen now. Hi, Riya. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are, like I said, at Funky Rainbow, completely delighted that we do have Indian Sign Language interpretation along with our, at our bazaar on disabling differences. My next set of recommendations, is a clutch of books on children that are different because they're not possibly able to speak, like other children, or hear like other children, or see like other children. And this one from Karadi, called The Bookworm, written by Lavanya Rn and illustrated by Shiloh Sulman, is the wonderful story of Sesha. Sesha is a very, very quiet boy who reads all the time. And he has a little brown book which no one has ever seen the inside of. The thing is, when Sesha opens his mouth to speak, nobody is able to understand him. He speaks very differently, but children, being children, are constantly teasing him. For instance, there is a paragraph in the book where it says that while the other kids were playing in the playground, Sesha was found sitting under the tree with a pile of books. So obviously the children are wondering who this strange person is, and children can be quite hurtful, right? So there is a paragraph that says, strange silent Sesha, his nose in a book, doesn't give anyone else a look. But bet his mum doesn't know what his face looks like. Bet his dad hasn't seen him since he was a little tyke. These are his friends, and they're making fun of him. But one day, just one day, this magical brown book opens, and the kids, their jaws drop to the ground, seeing the magic that Sesha has created on those pages. And from there on, Sesha becomes a completely different person. I'm just going to leave you with a lovely little, with a wonderful illustration of Sesha's magical brown book. And this story, such an empathetic story, published by Karadi, priced at 199 rupees. I think we've lost connection with Riya, and we're going to try to bring her back on screen. Yeah. Idea, some glitch, and we are back. So our next recommendation is Kanapana, Zai Whitaker's Kanapana. Everybody, knows Zai's writing, the sensitive, gentle, writing style that she has, and her characters that are so diverse. Kanapana is one of those lovely books illustrated by Nilofer Wadia and written by Zai about a young boy in whose head words roll and frolic and sort of swirl and twirl right through his head. Now the thing is, he hardly speaks. There are that many words that are whizzing around in his head, yet he hardly speaks. And even when he's making an attempt to, most people in and around him tell him, even before he can complete a sentence, they are speaking it for him. Well meaning family and friends, but Kanna is always very, very quiet. Until one day when he goes, to visit a cave, some caves of Chennai, somewhere around Mahabalipuram, and it becomes completely dark inside the cave. It is at that point in the book that we realize as readers, because right till then you don't know anything about Kanna, except that he's just a quiet young boy. The thing is, when it becomes completely dark inside the caves, everybody gets frightened except Kanna, and that's when you realize that he's visually challenged. What happens? Does this visually challenged young man rise to the occasion and help his family out of those caves? And what does that do to his confidence? The rhyming title Kanapana literally giving away to you what happens to young Kana when his confidence is absolutely boosted. Of course, nothing of the fun is lost in the story. And, the fact that Kana suffers a visual impairment, is just, it's something that simply doesn't, hamper him from doing what he really wants to do when everything becomes dark inside that cave. This one published by Tulika. Again, we'd recommend it for 5+ year olds and priced at 150 rupees. Our next book is Clumsy. Now, the thing is, the book is just the story of a girl who spills, drops, breaks things, trips on things, and has been labeled clumsy. She's been labeled a slow coach. She has been labeled careless. Now, words that literally scare away all the words that she has inside her. But one day, her grandmother gives her a box of paints. And with just that single box of paints, opens up a whole world. And as you can see, the book so sensitively illustrated by Manjari Chakravarti, written by Ken Spillman. The minute she gets the box of paints and the brush in her hands, the life just changes. Actually, Archana Atri saying, actually, in the cave, Kanna is sighted and the others are visually challenged. Absolutely, so well explained. Yes, it gets completely dark and we cannot really see anything. Shruti says, one of my favorite books that I bought from you guys. What a beautiful way to introduce the children about differently abled children. Yes, Zai Whittaker too, writing with so much sensitivity and such a gentle, wonderful, heartwarming story. Clumsy, of course, and as I said, the box of paints that completely changed the young girl's life. The thing is, we just assume that it was a book about, and it's just a book about a child who is clumsy and who gets called all kinds of names. But just a year and a half ago, read a blog written by the mother of an autistic child who told us that she absolutely found the story of Clumsy so lovely to use with her child, and so wonderful to make her child feel that there are children like this everywhere, and the word, you are not unique, you are not alone facing these challenges and problems, and the world is full of people with the world is full of people like you. So that's when we decided that we should use it in a bazaar where we're talking about differences on a spectrum. Like I said, this one published by Tulika, priced at 175 rupees, meant for 5+ year olds. We have two more lovely books. We seem to have lost Riya again, and she'll be back up in a bit. back back again, Ria. I
Yeah.
move on to our next book called Cayu's World is Round. And what is this world? It's the wheels of the cycle, a merry-go-round, a spinning top. Caillou lives in a quiet world that is full of circles and the patterns that they make. He sees a cricket ball spinning, and what he sees is the circle, the curve, and he can jump and sort of strike it. Even he can even just predict the way it's going to curve. Now, what does that do for a young boy like Caillou? Well, he's playing a game with his friends, and he's able to get two hat tricks as part of that cricket match, simply because he seems to have the ability to gauge things that are round. This is the story written by Lavanya Kapahi, and she has written about this, saying that it was inspired by a child with autism. This one, illustrated by Aditi Diore, is a wonderful story of of sort of the intersections, of how different children intersect, and how when they come together they play to their strengths. Such a lovely little story, and the kind of patterns that Caillou traces in his head, even visually represented in the book in this exciting manner, making us actually look at things that go round and round. Caillou's World is Round, published by Tulika, meant for 4+ year olds, priced at 175 rupees. We do have Also, Mini Srinivasan's I Didn't Understand, illustrated by Shubham Lakhera, which is, the story of Mana who has Down syndrome. Like I said, the world is, not entirely accepting. The world can get cruel, when they see people that are different from the way they are. And little Mana, goes to school where, she encounters bullying, she encounters, some kind of taunting, some kind of teasing. And Mini Srinivasan is a very sensitive writer. She has written this story based on true events, and literally, in her book, takes us right into Mana's mind. There are three incidents that happen at school, three very, very different incidents, and Mana just can't understand them. But when we go into Mana's mind, we understand what's going on. We understand, why she's being bullied. We understand why she's being teased. And, I think books like these do a lot to open conversations, with our youngest, readers, the youngest children, to tell them that, we need to be more inclusive, we need to be more understanding, we need to know that different kinds of people come into our lives. And just because somebody doesn't have the ability that, the kinds of ability that you do, it doesn't mean that they need to be discriminated in any way. Very emotive pictures that literally echo what's going on in Mana's mind. We'd recommend this for 5+ year olds, and this one, published by Tulika, is priced at 165 rupees. Would you like to, for us to say hello to a couple of people before we get ready to invite our wonderful guest for the day? But before I say hello to a whole bunch of people, I would like to tell all our friends watching on Instagram that we have an Indian Sign Language interpreter interpreting what we are saying at this bazaar. You're not able to view that window because, this is happening live on Facebook and YouTube. So if you are, if you indeed do have access to Facebook and YouTube, please do sign in and watch there, because even when the guest comes on, for a conversation with us, we are not able to broadcast that on Instagram because there are only limited streaming options available to us. So for those of you who are interested, please do join us either on Facebook Live or, on YouTube. But we really thank you for watching us on Instagram, across these weeks. A quick round of hellos to different people, to Red Eye Chapters, to Linisha, Caterpillars to Butterflies, Stories from Stones, Astha Maini, Malika Ravi Kumar. A big shout out. We know a new book is coming out, from you very, 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 very soon. And we will certainly put that up on our shelves as soon as we have it. Mutama says Mutama has your book, the book on law that you have written. Mutama does have, that one on disability as well. Delighted that you're watching us at this Disabling Differences Bazaar. Rohan Subramanian, how lovely to see you here, young man. We love it when young people come and watch us because you are the change that we want to see. Matthew Jacobs saying, fabulous to watch this session. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Dubai and for appreciating the work that we are doing. Sunila Kulkarni Gupta is saying, thank you so much, Riya. A big thank you again going out to Manisha and Riya for doing the sign language interpretation for Funky Rainbow's Disabling Differences Bazaar. My chapter 1 reading, Asha Nehmaya, Joanne Saldana, Divya Menon, Avyukt Nair, Dilver Thakur, Archana Atri, Jyoti Narayan, Ramachari, Ramna Atri, Pooja Verma, Sunila Kulkarni. So many, many names, so many friends, so many new people. We're delighted how many of you have joined us at the bazaar. Tanushri Singh, How lovely. And thank you for sharing what we do week after week on the Raccoons groups. It really makes a world of difference to us when our work is supported like this. Parag reads, what a pleasure. I'm so glad we're going to be collaborating soon on something exciting. Shilpa S, Article Design Studio, Big Book Pickle, Kunjali Janvi Ashar, Jahnavi Ashar, Sheets, Matthew Jacob, Ashish Gupta, Sumi Anup, Arpita Tyagi, DEOC, Annapurna Das, Shashi Rao Ahmed, Ishita Biswas Rumpa, Bihar Educational News, Birendra Raturi, Shruti Sri Raghunath, Aditi Nair, Ashok BP, Suvarna Javaji, Ward Just a Walk, and Mitanti. Such a pleasure that so many of you are here at our bazaar today, and we really do. We know that our guest who is going to join us, very, very quickly, is a remarkable lady who's done such fantastic work in the space of disability inclusion. We are waiting for her to come live. Has she? Oh, we have a little bit of time before she joins us, possibly 5 minutes, but maybe we can shift back to Manisha now, because Riya has been doing the interpretation for over 20 minutes. Welcome back, Manisha. Lovely to see you here, and we are going to wait for our guest to join us. Till when I will continue recommending some more books. We have a clutch of more books that feature protagonists with visual impairments. There is A Walk with Tambi, again written by Lavanya Karthik and illustrated by Proiti Roy. Such a lovely, luminous book about a little boy and his doggy who are going from one place to the other. They are late, but they're running on the street, they're playing in the river, they're climbing up the trees, doing everything that their amma has told them not to do. This wonderful bond between a boy and a dog is such a fun story. And just little details like the boy's walking stick or hand, or pocket, all of these things, the dog guiding him, that only gently lead us to understand that the boy is visually impaired, but nothing of that taking away from that enjoyment that boy and dog have, doing everything that their amma has told them not to do. Published by Tulika, meant for 4+ year olds and priced at 175 rupees. Did you say that Minu is ready to join us? Okay, so she is ready to join us. Okay, we will finish up the next two books before we introduce our guest. This one called Ready, Yes, Play, written by Arundhati Nath and illustrated by Priyankar Gupta, is again a lovely, it's an own voices book. It's about young Anu who loves to play cricket. I mean, who loves cricket, and her dream is to play the game. How Anu bowls everybody over in the first match. Amrita Goswami saying, love the theme of this book, Buzzaar. So glad to view this. Thank you so much, Amrita. So glad you have joined us. She bowls everyone over when she plays her first match. But what happens when she decides to go further, to play further? What happens is the reception as warm, as welcoming. Deepali Taneja saying, what a wonderful event. Thank you so much for joining us. And the thing is, Anu, of course, absolutely raring to play her favorite game. It is a story about blind cricket, and there is a lovely note about how blind cricket has been adapted for visually impaired players who can't see or maybe can just see a little. A lovely little book from Pratham, and like I said, an own voices book, because we do know the author Arundhati Nath, suffers a visual impairment herself. Sometimes these stories ringing really true to the heart. We would recommend this for 7+ year olds, 6+ year olds. This one is priced at 35 rupees. There are two other books that many of you are familiar with, and this one we have showcased over and over again in different bazaars, called Thuppa for All, written by Prabha Ram and Sheila Prut and illustrated by Shilpa Ranade, which is such a beautiful story about a young boy called Sering. Now, what about Sering? Sering can't wait to taste his grandmother's delicious noodle soup. And a young boy, as he's going back home, invites everyone that he sees on the way. He sees his friends, he's calling all of them to come over and taste his grandmother's thukpa. Now, of course, what was supposed to be a lovely meal for just two of them snowballs into a giant tukpa feast. And just as preparations are underway, the power goes off. Now, what happens? Can Abi, that is Sering's grandma, actually produce this much awaited delicious tuppa? And how does Sering help her? Shilpa Ranade's stunning illustration really bring alive this warm and delectable story. This one, published by Karadi, is priced at 399 rupees. You can see that it has quite, we would recommend it for 6+ year olds because it does have, more text. In fact, this book was listed in the 2019 EB catalog of outstanding books for young people with disabilities, and it featured in the 2020 Outstanding International Books list from the United States Board on Books for Young People. And before we say hello to our guest, one lovely book that we could never not have recommended at this bazaar, Pickle Yolk's Macher Jhol, written by Richa Jha and illustrated by Sumanta De. What a gorgeous book this is, really. I believe it emerged from a series of photographs of the city of Kolkata, and you can see that Sumanta De's illustrations of the city, absolutely bringing it to life so wonderfully, and the shades and textures adding such a feeling of warmth to the story. What is it about? It's about a young boy whose Baba is not well. Gopu knows his Baba is not well, and his Baba, is not well for a day, for another day, and a third day. And the one thing that he seems to want to do is to taste his favorite Macher Jhol. What does Gopu do? What does Gopu do to get his Baba the Macher Jhol? Does he go off on a journey? And what is it? Does he go off on a journey down the busy lanes of Kolkata? He's going alone, a young boy who's going alone. What do you realize about Gopu in the course of this fabulous picture book, Macher Jhol? Sunila Gupta is saying, it's one of my favorite books. It indeed is. She's so thrilled to see her favorite book. It's such a lovely book, and its illustrations just striking, and bringing alive a city as well as Gopu's journey magnificently for young readers and for all of us as well. Like I said, published by Pickle Yolk Books, priced at 350 rupees. And all of these books available on our site, www.funkyrainbow.com. You have to click on the tab that says Bazaar. A drop-down menu will have a tab that says Disability. All the books that we're recommending today, and a lot more than we can recommend, live, are all put up there. Their blurbs are there. Please do read the book. Please do pick up the books. Please do read them. If you think that these books suit your reading requirements. And it's the most wonderful way to build empathy is to do it by books. And we do know that all of us the world over need to become more empathetic, more inclusive. And with that, I would like to welcome our guest for the day, who's been waiting just behind the scenes in our waiting room. there's just one thing to say about our guest today is that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Her list of credentials is so long that we could spend the whole bazaar talking to you about them. But, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Dr. Meenu Bambani, who has who is a CSR and diversity and inclusion professional with over 2 decades of experience in the area of human development. I mean, there are so many achievements that Meenu has, and such a wide range of them. She actually began her career teaching English literature in a government college in Kishangarh. Then she moved on to work as Assistant Commissioner Disabilities with the government of Rajasthan as a program officer, and then, of course, moved to the National Center for Promotion of Employment for Persons with Disabilities, the organization that Muttama was talking about. Sorry? Sorry, some glitch. So we're just. Okay, the NCPEPD that Muttama was, telling me to tell you all about at the beginning of the program. She presently heads CSR and diversity and inclusion for State Street Corporation in the Asia Pacific. But prior to joining State Street, she spent over a decade at Emphasis, where she was instrumental in creating equal opportunities at the workplace and addressing systemic challenges that we face, to disability inclusion. She has won many awards, including in the individual category, the NCPEDP Shell Helen Keller Award. Ladies and gentlemen, it is absolutely with pleasure that we welcome a lady who has literally walked the talk in the space of diversity and inclusion. Very good afternoon to you, Meenu, and thank you for joining us at our bazaar.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, Funky Rainbow. And more importantly, I'm like frightened with the list that you have just gone on and on with. I just wanted to mention when you said that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I want to flip that over. That how the tough get going is. You spoke about systemic challenges. That's how we get going.
Absolutely, absolutely, Meenu. And we've been reading and hearing about the remarkable work we've done. We are so delighted to see your chirpy, cheerful 6-year-old with you this morning. And I know I have a question about it coming up for you later. That amongst despite everything that you've done, the one identity that you spoke about with so much warmth and affection was being mother to the lovely 6-year-old girl who's absolutely crossing right over you at the moment, making us feel that this is exactly why children will show us the way forward, really. Show and bazaar and everything else be damned. I want to play with my mother, and that's exactly what I'm going to do at the moment. Archana Atri, who's watching us, somebody who's worked extensively with children and books, running a wonderful book club where she introduces Indian children's books to the to all the kids who are there. It's a very diverse and inclusive club. Wants to say a big hello to you, Meenu. So
Hi.
I'm going to, start off with your, growing up years in Jaipur. You did your schooling there, and I did read somewhere where you said that schooling was so tough. You had to convince your school to move the classes down to lower floors. You had to ask for being exempted from attending assembly. You needed to ask for help to carry your things from the school bus to the classroom and back. Tell us, is this where the idea of being a disability rights champion first took root?
So, when I was growing up and when I was in school, this was mid and late 70s. There was no concept of rights. And as a child, you do not know what your right is. Children are the most powerless beings, and there is whole power system that plays around them. Um, but somewhere I feel the seeds of fighting were
Mm-hmm.
sown at that time, because my parents fought for me. My parents didn't understand rights. My
Mm-hmm.
parents didn't understand any of this language about entitlement or privilege. They just wanted to give a good education to the child, and they were seeing the difficulties that I was facing. And so every time there was a difficulty, I don't think I was ever vocal in the school.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I used to go back and tell my parents, but I also didn't have that language at that point in time, that what is it that I'm facing. The constant struggle of a child who studies in an inclusive uh, or a uh, inclusive is again in inverted commas, because again there was no concept of inclusion. You were admitted, but I don't think you were included.
Right.
So being given admission and being included are two different things.
Absolutely.
Because the expectation is that if you have been given admission, you are supposed to do everything that all other children are doing, whether participating in physical education classes, to attending assembly, to uh, being active in the class. And then you start realizing your limitations, that your a is the limitation with you, or is it with the system which is not really accommodating you, which is not making, which is not creating a level playing field for you to be able to perform on par with everyone else.
Absolutely.
And throughout my school, my college, my university, um, I think the struggle was, how do I fit in? How do I behave, act, and be like everyone else? There is a, when people with disabilities, when they are growing up, there is a sense of shame. There is a sense of negation. You want to negate your own identity as a person with disability, because your constant struggle is, how do I look like everyone else? I have shared this in many platforms, that when I look back at some of my photographs from school, either I'm missing in those photographs, or some of my photographs, I used to walk with a stick. So my hand is always behind me, because I didn't want my stick to be seen. Because for
Mm-hmm.
me, that was such a visible marker of my being different, my being disabled. Um, and gradually, and this thing about, school admits you, you ask for accommodation, that please exempt me from attending the assembly. And one teacher comes and says that, oh, I have seen children who have disabilities try to take advantage of their disability. Instead of, and you don't counter that, argument, you internalize it. You don't seek, you don't counter that, you don't fight back. So you just keep quiet, you just internalize it. And there is a cloud of silence in which you live, trying to adapt yourself to that environment, rather than forcing the environment to change. So those were my growing up years, whether it was college, whether it was school, whether it was university. I did my PhD in English literature from University of Rajasthan. A couple of teachers I still remember very fondly, who encouraged me, and um, uh, did not look at me as somebody wanting sympathy, but somebody wanting an opportunity. And I
Absolutely.
think I was ambitious from the very beginning. But I think because the system was so challenging, that I remained a mediocre student throughout, and used to question myself, my own intelligence, that I don't think I have it in me to make it big in
Oh,
life. I don't think I can do it. But
but that changed,
so I
isn't it?
just have to choose a path in which I will just survive.
but that changed. But just before we get on to your next question, we would like to change the interpreter, so Ria can come back on screen, and we'll go on to our next question. Welcome back, Ria. So, of course, all that changed, Meenu, when you went to do your master's degree in disability and human development from the University of Illinois at Chicago. You were supported by a fellowship from the International Ford Foundation. And, when we were talking yesterday, as well as, when I read, various newspaper features on you, you say Chicago changed your life. Tell us how that happened.
That those 2 years, when I look back, I think um, they played a critical role in shaping my understanding of disability rights. It shaped my understanding of what equal opportunity is. The pride of identifying myself as a woman with a disability, as a person with a disability, as a professional with a disability. I think it all came from there. Um, uh, when you're growing up in an environment which is where you only have non-disabled role models, um, it becomes a little difficult because to identify, because you somewhere deep down you know that there is a difference between you and them.
Your voice is
You need
breaking, Meenu.
to
Sorry, your voice is breaking.
you can which is an inside world, which is, you know that you are not being judged in that world, um, and your self-esteem just goes up. uh,
Imagine.
so as I was mentioning about my schooling and my college and my university, that asking for every accommodation was a challenge. I had to think like for months before I could ask for it. And when I went to the US, the first thing was, as a student with disabilities, I had to register with Office of Disability Services,
Okay.
and they asked me what is the support that I need. And because I have a locomotor disability and I can't walk long distance, I cannot carry heavy books and walk with them. So transport and accessible transport was my key requirement. So I registered and they said, okay, we have an accessible vehicle in the campus, a van. You have to send a schedule every Friday. So of course you have to plan your life. You cannot
God.
just be unplanned. But so which is what I had to do around my classes, when I wanted to go to the library, when I wanted to go to the cafeteria, when I wanted to use the fitness center, learn swimming, and things like that. So the van would take me everywhere. It was a city campus, it was not just in one place. So the buildings were all over the city, the downtown, spread across. And in my class, when I was doing my master's there, I had people with cerebral palsy. I had students who were living with mental illness. There were students who were blind. There were students who were deaf, and there were students who had siblings with disabilities, who were non-disabled students. So it was a class where you had all mixed disabilities, all categories of disabilities studying together, being provided accommodation together. Each, because you can't have one size fits all, so each accommodation was customized for blind students. There were note takers and there were readers to accessible material given in advance. For deaf students, there was live transcription in the class, to sign language interpretation, to flexibility to students with living with mental illness and mental health issues. Uh, for me, that was mind blowing. That, oh,
I
I
can
had never
imagine.
seen this. I had never come across this, or that this is possible.
Right.
And that gave me this, I don't want to, I want to learn this. I want to go back, and this is what I want to do in India.
Wow. Wow. And
If
you did.
even if I know I'm not very powerful, but if I can get an opportunity to advocate for such changes, I will do that. And constantly, I was on the lookout for those opportunities where one could advocate for mainstreaming of people with disabilities and bringing about systemic changes.
And you did that, isn't it, Meenu? You absolutely did
So
that
that's
in
how it became a game changer. I also, for the first time in my life, I traveled alone. I stayed alone.
wow.
Most people with disabilities are very protected by their families.
Right.
So exploring the world um, is a challenge. Today, of course, things have changed, especially in the urban centers.
Yes, yeah.
Uh, but sometimes when I look around, I still feel that the more things have changed, the more they remain the same. This whole intersectionality of class, privilege, access to resources, all that plays such a huge role in your exposure, in your access to system.
Archana is saying it's such a privilege to have Meenu open up her world to us. It indeed is. It is our privilege. And that's what you did. You know, Joanne Saldana saying, Meenu, thank you so much for this. It is truly eye-opening. These are all, you know, library educators, teachers, Selza Narona saying eye-opening. Admission is not, inclusion. So the thing is that, Sunila Kulkarni saying admission and included, my God, what revealing words and how well the concept opens out to learn and understand. So that, I mean, we can imagine that that was literally the wind beneath your wings, because all through your corporate career, you have focused on bringing about inclusivity in the workplace and breaking the myth that persons with disability are not employed. Why don't you tell us about some of those fantastic initiatives that you've put in place? You know, both, and this we discovered in the course of our conversation with you yesterday, it's not just at work, but also in public spaces. So, do tell us about a couple of those initiatives, Mino.
Sure. So, as I was mentioning that for me, the exposure that happened in Chicago was a huge shift in my own learning on what equal opportunity is. And I was extremely, extremely fortunate to have worked with emphasis. I worked there for more than 12 years, literally spending half my working life in that company.
Okay.
And the kind of opportunities and the open hand that I got to bring about uh, some of that thinking in whatever they did. So I started there with focusing both. I joined as head of CSR and diversity and inclusion way back in 2007. Looked at a lot of challenges that companies face and people with disabilities face in accessing uh, basic right to work and right to employment. Um, and there was a huge learning that I got. One is the flexibility that the employers need to have, the skill sets that people with disabilities themselves need to have, and
Hmm.
where do those skills come from? Who trains people with disabilities for jobs? How do you do skill mapping and not a disability mapping? So changing the perception around that you know the way government of India has done it, and I think it continues to do it in the same way, that if you have one hand disability, you will be able to do this job, and if you have both hand disability, then you can't be an agriculture economist, and
Okay.
weird kind of combinations basis your disability. Whereas skill mapping is something that we introduce, that these are the essential skills required, and this is the support that is required for a person with disability to be able to perform the task,
Right.
which is essential or non-essential. Non-essential, not required for the job, can be
Mm-hmm.
done away with, and that's how you bring in more people.
Right.
Some partnering with some of the NGOs to bring about skill building in people with disabilities was another thing that we initiated, which became an industry norm at that point in time, where we emphasis pioneered it, and many other organizations followed suit. That is train and hire model. But and that helped the company to recruit nearly 500 people with disabilities in 3 years, winning many awards. But eventually we realized, and which was my firm belief from my own lived experience, that people with disabilities are not just limited to an NGO where they go and seek support. People with disabilities are all around us. You have to look for them in mainstream colleges, universities, educational institutions, schools, through mainstream media. Reach out to them, do an employer branding. They will also come to you. And also, how our colleges were just not equipped to encourage this self identification by people with disabilities, by students with disabilities, asking, facilitating a system which would make them comfortable to seek accommodation. So, first initiative in 2009 in the external space was starting an Office of Disability Services at IIM Bangalore. That continues to remain one of the only institutions. Today, there are equal opportunity cells in many universities, but that was the first to begin with, which received many awards. And even till today, students who clear CAT, even if they get admissions in other universities, other IIMs and colleges, they choose IIMB because you have a system in place which will accommodate you with dignity, with respect, and respect your rights.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Another one was, as I said, that in the university, uh, the accessible van, which made mobility so easy for me.
Possible for you.
Um, it was my dream that when I come back to India, this is something that I really want. Um, and it took time, starting with piloting initiative like Kickstart Cabs and
Mm-hmm.
moving it to Uber Access.
Uber
Uh,
access, right.
and so Bangalore became the first city in Asia to have Uber Access and Uber Assist. And it continues to remain the only city where accessible transportation is part of a mainstream transport solution which everybody
Wonderful.
uses.
Just so
Uh,
wonderful. Yeah.
I just hope it remains viable, and uh, unless there is policy support, it will not survive for a very long time. But there is a need which it fulfills. The third one was also around community spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times I came across these arguments. People with disabilities need inclusive education. People with disabilities need jobs. They need accessibility at railway stations, at bus stands, at airports. Okay. Uh, okay, so they get education, they travel from one city to another, they get good
Jobs.
jobs, but they continue to remain invisible because none of your community spaces, whether it is restaurants, whether it is malls, whether it is any uh, any other community education space, you do not make it accessible, you do not make it inclusive. They continue to remain invisible, unheard, unseen. And I remember before I was leaving emphasis, there was this proposal around making a museum of art and photography. The proposal came to support that, and a lot of the committee members at that time had questioned me that yes, we
Mm-hmm.
are doing good work in disability inclusion. Why do we need to support art? That's not important, and that's not our focus. And I because I have the lived experience of disability, and by that time I had also become a mother to a child who was going to school. And I told them that because you don't think that people with disabilities, after they get job, will also get married, they will become, their relationships will change. They are not just professionals with disabilities, but they could be mothers with disabilities, they could be
Right.
fathers with disabilities, they may have children with disabilities. And lot of families today, I mean, when you talk to people, you will find so many senior citizens in our own homes who acquire disability with age. You know,
Right.
I see my own mother, her eyesight has been affected because of diabetes. She has lost, uh, she has hearing loss, a significant hearing loss, and she's using hearing aid. The arthritis, which has reduced her mobility. And I said that you think that disability is a separate category, and it's a homogeneous group, which you will find only in one place.
Right.
You know, my daughter gets invited for birthday parties. There are many places I just can't take her because they are organized at play gyms. I'm talking about pre-COVID era.
Right. Right.
And of course, today everything is Zoom and all birthday parties
Zoom.
are on Zoom.
Right. Right.
Uh, but in pre-COVID times, this is what used to happen. And I have to think 10 times and ask whether the place is accessible. If not, uh, I can't go. So if I can't go, I become invisible. It also leads to exclusion of my child from that social
Absolutely.
circle.
Absolutely.
And this is where this thing about, you know, how community spaces need to be inclusive of everyone, because families are comprised of so many diversities.
Need to have spaces as well, right? Yes, yes, absolutely. I have to ask whether we can, change the Indian Sign Language interpreter over, because it's, they have a 20-minute patch,
Sure.
time frame to do the interpretation. So can we ask for Manisha to come up, please, before we go on to the next question with Mino? Hi, Manisha. And the thing is, so yes, I mean, it's just remarkable that these initiatives that you've taken, both in the spaces of at workspaces as well as community spaces, going a long way. But we know, like I said, just as I was introducing you, one of the roles that that has, I think, really transformed your life is that of a mother to a young, a curious and a lovely child. Now we know that you've, picked up many books from Funky Rainbow across, the last couple of years, and you do read a lot of those books with her, basically,
Yeah,
right? So you have some favorites, and we would like you to tell our audience about a couple of favorites, because there are one or two questions for you, and I would like to sort of have you, but yet I would like to have you tell us about those books, the ones that are your favorites of reading with your child.
sure. Um, Funky Rainbow has been quite amazing. And I must congratulate you today for the sign language interpretation. So thank you, Manisha, and thank you, Riya, and thank you,
Absolutely.
DEOC, for facilitating this. You know, there are so many mainstream events that keep happening. I'm from Jaipur, and Jaipur Lit Fest is one of the biggest literature festival, and we don't see any sign language interpretation there.
Absolutely.
So kudos to Funky Rainbow for doing this
Just to
today.
all of you, really, and to Muttama, who's such a big champion for disability. Joanne Saldana saying absolutely amazing. Thanks, Manisha and Ria. But go ahead, tell us about your favorite books.
Yeah. Uh, so my favorite books are not necessarily those that have a disability, or a character with a disability. So I tend to pick up books for my daughter, which I feel will appeal to her, will connect with her. And you know, after my daughter came, somehow I got interested in learning art. So a lot of books which have beautiful illustrations appeal to me, and I think that they will appeal to my daughter as well. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But that is always a challenge with kids. But nevertheless, just giving them exposure is critical. So I just keep doing that, and uh, I am a book hoarder, so I keep hoarding also a lot of books. Um, some of the books that I picked up from Funky Rainbow, where disability is not very obvious,
Right.
and but still, someone like me who has an eye for it will see it. So
Yes.
this book, I'm
Amachi
sure
book.
many people have read it. It's a
Yes.
favorite with kids. Amati's Glasses. And I just found this book very hilarious. My daughter loves it. It's my personal favorite too. And second, third reading, you realize that okay, it's also about an assistive aid that Amachi uses, and how in the absence of that, the hilarious things happen. And then you feel that, oh yeah, you have a grandmom, you have a mother who has aged and who is doing these hilarious things. I mean, with my mother's hearing disability now, we keep joking also sometimes, and it has become so normal, because
Part
now
of
she's
your
part of the insider group where we can have jokes about it.
absolutely
So this one is my personal favorite.
lovely. We love that interpretation of somebody with assisted, visual
A,
aids. Yes.
yeah. Another one is, you mentioned Sujata Padmanabhan. This is
Wonderful
called
writer.
Bamboo.
What a lovely book. Yes.
It is an amazing story, and doesn't have much drama or any melodrama, but how the donkey refuses to move after it's dark, and how the owner wants to sell this donkey because he finds him useless. And
Hmm.
then uh, there is this brain wave, and somebody comes and tells them that if you have that torch, which will give light, and his color blindness or a night blindness can
Will.
be addressed. So
Yes.
introducing a very different disability in such a nuanced, subtle way, and introducing the concept of accommodation, a reasonable accommodation and affordable accommodation. I thought it's quite beautiful in this book. So this
Such
is
a
my
lovely
personal favorite.
interpretation. Such a lovely interpretation. We wouldn't have thought of it like that at all, actually.
Then my daughter's favorite is Amma Kahan Hai.
Where's Anwar?
Again, the illustrations by Sri Vidya Natarajan uh,
Yes.
are just so hilarious, so real, and you can connect with, and especially the expressions of the cat in this. I just love. I'm sure this has been translated in many languages.
That's
So
true.
uh, I bought this book when my daughter was 2.5, 3 years old. Now
Uh-huh.
she's 6, but she continues to pick up this book and read it.
How lovely.
Yeah. Then I have this, the weightlifting
Oh,
princess,
yes.
and I thought, uh, the way this book ends, now you are fit to be a champion's wife, and the way she says, "No, I am the champion."
He is my husband.
Yeah,
He's the champion's husband.
yeah. And so the way it reverses the stereotypes, and also I think the way it talks about body image,
Right.
a lot of it is about self-esteem. So I really like this book for my daughter. It's about the princess Nila.
Lovely.
So this was gifted by a friend, and some of the books that again I got this as a gift from
And
Funky Rainbow. Rama is here, the
Yeah.
enduring arc.
What a lovely book it is, right?
Yeah, and I love Tara books for the art that they have and the illustrations. Uh, I'm just a collector of Tara books wherever and whenever I can afford them. I just grab them and hoard them. And when I do my annual sifting through of books, these books never go out of my shelf.
Lovely. Those were such lovely recommendations and such lovely interpretations of books of as characters with challenges and how they overcome it. Now, one of the things that we want to ask, and I did see a question go up, which is quite related to what I meant to ask you, was as parents, teachers, librarians, give us some tips about simple things that we can do in our everyday lives to become more empathetic and inclusive and help our children inculcate these values too. And I see Jyoti Narayan, also somebody who writes extensively about Indian children's books, saying, what can parents and caregivers around differently abled do that they would, or rather not do
Right.
to make
Uh,
things more inclusive?
right. See, you know, as a parent, it continues to remain a journey for me of learning. Uh, when I look at the community spaces, I feel that they are still not inclusive of children with disabilities. We have a lot of
Right.
literature around children with disabilities. We are talking of, say, sign language,
Mhm.
story around deaf children where sign language is prominently being used. But when we are organizing any events, inviting any author, are we having sign language interpretation? Today, technology is being used extensively. Your But the assumption is that all parents are the same.
Mhm.
uh, there could be mothers with disabilities, there could be parents who could be deaf, there could be parents who could be blind. Are our events, promotional events, inclusive of such diversities? um, when we are sending out communication, for example, that okay, we have this author coming in and this is what is going to be, are we even asking that, if you need any accommodation, let us know so that we are prepared?
Yeah.
So the branding also has to change.
Correct.
um, a lot of libraries, they're located on first floors, no lifts, no access, difficult for parents like us to take our kids there.
Absolutely.
uh, and so they remain very exclusive places, making parents or children with disabilities uh, uh, invisible.
Right.
So these are some of the simple things which we can do to start with. I mean, there's lots to learn as one goes along. Um, and as publishers, sometimes, I feel that when writers are writing books around
Right.
children with disabilities or characters with disabilities, a lot of it is also observation as an
Yes.
outsider, but
Yes.
representation. Who represents whose voice? Um, I think there's some homework needs to be done in terms of just talking to people with disabilities, getting an idea about their lived experience, which
Absolutely.
could be very different from what their perception and observation is.
Absolutely. The need for these own voices. There have been
Yeah,
a lot of discussions around them in the kidlit space, saying, are they the best representations of the people that we're writing about?
yeah.
But
So
yeah, those were such lovely points, such wonderful insights, Mino. We are you know so thankful. You did make some very important points. I do remember when we were looking for an office for Funky Rainbow, Muttama telling us that it's got to be on the ground floor. If you're going to have books for children, it has got to be on the ground floor, and it takes a certain understanding of when you're looking for an office and something is a little less expensive and it's on the first floor, your temptation is to consider it, basically, right? But
Right.
you need that extra voice to come in to say to us that we can do small things in our lives every day to make the world more inclusive, to make it open to children of all abilities. And I do know that we have been repeatedly thinking of what we can do to make our website more inclusive, more friendly to people of different
Right.
abilities. And we really would love it if people came forward in support. I mean, it's a huge archive of books that are available there, and we would like everyone to be
Right.
able to access it. We would be delighted if people like you and so many others who are watching could come forward to support such an initiative. But thank you. That was such a wonderful conversation. We go back home today. I'm sure all of us watching will go back home today thinking, at least becoming a thinking person, and at least knowing that we need to do what it takes to make the world a much more inclusive place. Thank you so much for joining us this morning at our bazaar. Archana Atri says, Meenu has given us lots of points to mull over and talk with our children about. Thank you so much. Really, she's taken the words out of my mouth. Thank you so much, Meenu, for joining us here today.
Thank you, Vidya. Thank you, Mutamma. Thank you, Funky Rainbow. And I'm truly honored. Thanks for this opportunity.
It's been a
And I
pleasure.
wish you
We
all
are
the
the
best.
ones who are
I
honored.
I will continue to remain loyal to loyal buyer of books from Funky Rainbow.
You are with us. That's all that matters. Thank you so much. Thank you also to Manisha, who's been doing the ISL for, I think, 20 minutes now. So maybe time to change over to Riya. But we'll, certainly be in touch with you, Meenu, to do more and more that we can to make
Sure.
our lives, our spaces, and our books more inclusive. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah. Okay. Bye bye.
We could ask Riya to, come on at the moment. And thank you for joining us, Riya. That was just a wonderful conversation with Dr. Meenu Bambani, really opening our eyes. Book Pickle saying, "Thank you, Meenu. That was eye-opening. Indeed, it was." I know, we think of ourselves as more informed, more aware individuals, but you only need to speak to people about their experiences to understand how much more we can do to make our world more inclusive. And this conversation with Meenu, across the last couple of days has been a most eye-opening one for all of us. We have so many other books to recommend, and I know we're like fairly short of time, but we are, I will recommend a clutch of them, for the next, 15, 20 minutes before we go into our segment on new arrivals. There are a lot of books that are there at the bazaar, so do check out our website www.funkyrainbow.com. Click on the tab that says bazaar, a drop down menu, one of the tabs there will read visibility. All the books that we have put into the bazaar, whether we are able to recommend it or not, are up there. You may find these excellent conversation starters, not just with children, with adults as well. We move on with our recommendations, and I'm going to just pick and choose a few because we have very little time. But there's this, uh just one second, some yeah, we needed to switch the screens like this, for Ria to be, be visible very clearly. But this one, a lovely book called Anya and Her Baby Brother, written by Jerry Pinto and illustrated by Maithili Joshi. Now, the thing is, Anya's brother, Anya has been mostly pouting and shouting ever since her brother came along. Now, what is making her so annoyed? Well, he's a special child, and her mother says he needs care all the time. But Anya is just fed up. I mean, how can her mother and father just ignore her and, pay attention only to her brother. But just then, just when she's getting fully fed up, comes a lovely butterfly. And, not a butterfly, in fact, Jerry Pinto calls it a butter being who takes her up into the clouds and shows her a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and, eventually telling her just how special every child really is. This is, from one of India's best known writers for children. We all know that Jerry Pinto's M in the Big Home, which he wrote for adults, is perhaps one of the most marvelous books of fiction on, a person, I mean, living with a parent with neurological disorders. This one, though, bringing in a bit of sci-fi, a bit of fantasy, a bit of humor, you to tell us that children all over the world are special in one way or the other. We'd recommend it for 5+ year olds, and it's priced at 175 rupees. We move on to some chapter books, and we love this one called Kittu's Terrible, scratched out, no horrible, scratched out, no good, scratched out, very mad day. Well, of course, it's a romp of a book, a hilarious one, and it's the story of the world's most chaotic family. Why is this the world's most chaotic family? Because this family, when driving on the highway, has just left Kittu right behind at a dhaba. Trust Indian families to be exactly like this. Now, what does Kittu do? He's rescued by an ice cream wala, and suddenly his terrible, horrible day turns mad, turns zany, turns delightful. And there is, it's all about, it's all about getting to a skating park, basically, because ice cream wala takes him to a skating park. But there is a boy with crutches, supposed to go around, zoom around on a skateboard. Somebody telling us that this is very useful information. Thank you so much. This is precisely why we want to showcase these books. What awesome books, says Deepali Taneja. Thank you so much for that. But how can a boy with just one leg and who has crutches go skateboarding? Well, is Kittu mad enough to try that? What a lovely book, written by Harshika Udasi and illustrated by Lavanya Naidu. It is a lovely chapter book, which means there are big pictures and text. We would recommend this for 7+ year olds, priced at 199 rupees and published by Duckbill. There are a clutch of three books that we have focused on, I mean, that we've picked on, with children who stammer as protagonists. There's Manya Learns to Roar, and I'm going to zip through these recommendations because we have recommended these books in many bazaars. Manya, written by Shruti Rao, again an own voices book. Because Shruti too suffers, has the disability of stammering, and has written this lovely story about a young girl called Manya who wants to be Sher Khan in the school play. No other than Sher Khan. The thing is, her friends and her teacher, they're not quite sure that a girl who stammers, can she play the role of Sher Khan? But Manya knows that she is and can be a superb Sher Khan. What happens, when the day, the annual, as the day comes closer for the annual play, Manya is growing more and more anxious, but can she overcome her fears and become the Sher Khan that she wants to? Can she roar? This one again published by Duckbill, priced at 199 rupees, meant for 7+ year olds. Duckbill has these two wonderful whole books, two books with literally a whole, through them, which are again chapter books meant for let's say 7 to 8 year olds. Lots of, I mean, text, but large format text with illustrations. And we've picked these two because they have protagonists who stammer. Now, in Susie Will Not Speak, Jahan is, Susie's best friend, but Susie is the butt of ridicule at school because she has a lisp. They won't, when she says her own name, when she calls out her own name, it comes out sounding like Tuti, and the kids are all laughing, so they're always calling her Tuti. Now Susie gets so fed up of all this ragging and teasing that she just decides that she's not going to speak anymore. What does Jahan do? She's Susie's best friend. What does Jahan do to help Susie? Similarly, in this one, Krish, the protagonist, has to give a speech at school. But can he give the speech because he stammers? And you know what? His partner to give the speech is the school's biggest bully. How on earth is Krish going to get out of this mess? Lovely books that really, the trials and tribulations of being in schools, and yet the triumph of the spirit, and fun situations, difficult situations, all of them showcased in these simple books that are meant for 7 to 9 year olds, priced at 175 rupees and published by Duckbill. I know a bazaar that focuses on disabling differences cannot only focus on books that feature physical disabilities. So we do have a clutch of books that feature protagonists across the spectrum of mental disabilities, and sometimes the first step to those disabilities probably even begins from depression. There's this lovely book called Who Stole Bhaya's Smile, which is written by Sanjana Kapoor and illustrated by Sunaina Koilo, which is the story of young Chiru. There's a little girl called Chiru, and she loves her Bhaya. But something's wrong with her Bhaya. He just doesn't feel like playing anymore. And you know what Chiru knows? She knows that this is because of a new monster friend, and you can see the visual representation of a new monster friend who is hanging around around Bhaya's head all the time. Duck, duck. She calls this, monster Duck, duck, and she knows that we need to take this seriously. Nobody in the family is taking this seriously, but Chiru knows that there's something more than what's happening that meets the eye. So this one, we would recommend for 8+ year olds. And as Mutima says, the theme of this year's disability is that not all this year's disability day was that not all disabilities are visible. And this clutch of books really about those disabilities that are not visible. What happens? Can Chiru help her Bhaiya? This one published by Pratham, priced at 50 rupees. Hope, stories for a healthy mind. Again, a lovely collection of stories. We would again recommend it for 8, 9 year olds, where you meet three different kinds of kids. There's Ryan, there's Shoma, there's Kabir. They're all brave, they're all smart, they're all kind, but all three kids have to deal with different kinds of emotional challenges. And these emotional challenges caused by the stress and strain of modern life. How do they cope? What do they do to develop the strength? What do they do to make sure their mind is happy and healthy? How do their families help them? A wonderful book about mental health, and a great one to start conversations to help us build emotionally healthy children. This one published by Scholastic, priced at 295 rupees. Our next two books are again, dealing with the big D that a lot of us face in life in so many instances. There's Inside a Dark Box, written by Ritu Vaishnav, and there's The Boy in the Dark Hole, written by Vaishali Shroff, both dealing with depression. We know that there are times the protagonist in this book is feeling depressed and can do something to push it away, but sometimes the depression can be so overwhelming that it pushes its way right back in. What do you do when you're trapped in this darkness? How can you find your way out? of what could be a long and lonely battle. What can we do to help minds that are struggling to deal with these challenges? What can we do to help them overcome it? It's a really a simple little book. We would recommend it, like I said, to 8+ year olds. Very little text, but indeed, grappling with the issue of depression. Ditto The Boy in the Dark Hole, which is the story of a young boy called SP who falls into this trap of depression. What happens? Who helps him? Fortunately for SP, he has friends and family, but sometimes when you're depressed, you don't even want to take their help. What does SP do? How does he get himself out of the dark hole? This one published by Ekalavya. Again, we'd recommend this for older readers, 9+ year olds, published by Ekalavya and priced at 110 rupees. There is C is for cat and D is for depression, written by Keravi Bharatram and illustrated by Priya Kurian, which takes you on an exquisite journey of metaphors, colors, textures, and Kairavi has really magically woven in stories of courage, of grit amidst despair, amidst darkness, pointing to the fact that there's always that ray of light out there somewhere in the corner. And what we must do is to try and find it ourselves, or at least take help to find it. Kairavi herself has spoken about, her challenges growing up and her, grappling with depression. So again, this is a book that has been written from lived experience. We would recommend this one for older readers. We'd say 12+ year olds. It's written very powerfully in rhyme, and it's a book that make you cry sometimes, make you laugh sometimes, make you look up at at people who are dealing with challenges like depression. Look up at them in awe and do your bit to help them. This is published by Scholastic and priced at 495 rupees. We did have a clutch of books, but I'm not going to have time to go through them. I'm going to move to one or two, lovely young adult ones in our collection before we move on to, some of our new arrivals. And this is a book that I have thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed reading, simply because of what a well told story it is. Right Arm Over by Moti Nandi, which is written originally in Bangla but translated into English by Aruna Vasana. A fantastic story of two friends, of cricket, of friendship, and written by a writer who in Bangla was called the master of sports fiction. It's the story of two friends, Jibon and Ananto. They are best friends. They are very promising cricketers. Jibon is a stylish batsman and Ananto a gifted fast bowler. But one day they meet with an accident and Jibon loses half of his right arm. Considering how talented the two are, and how much promise his career held, this really seems to be the end of that career for Jibon. Is that the case? Does that happen? Does Ananto give up on his friend? Does Jibon himself give up on himself? It is such a fascinating story. It's such a compelling read, written and translated so wonderfully. Right Arm Over is perhaps one of the most, very, very inclusive stories that I have read myself in recent times. We'd recommend this for 12+ year olds. It's published by Speaking Tiger and priced at 250 rupees.
National Association of the Deaf. He says, thank you for good organization to provide Indian Sign Language. Actually,
So somebody, Muttama, interrupting to say that there's a gentle Mr. A.S. Narayan telling us that, he's so thankful to DEOC for giving us the wonderful sign language, Indian sign language interpreters who have been right with us through this show, interpreting this what we're talking of, all the books that we're introducing, plus the conversation with Dr. Meenu Bhambani for viewers with different abilities. He wants to
Secretary
say,
of the National
he is the secretary of the National Association of the Deaf. Thank you, sir. We're so glad that you have, come forward to watch this program, and you're writing in to thank the organization, DEOC. So, from all of us at Team Funky Rainbow, a big, big round of applause going out to DEOC, to Rama, for making this possible for us, and to our two wonderful ISL interpreters. We're complete chatterboxes at Funky Rainbow, and for them to be able to keep pace and so adeptly interpret this, really hats off to you, young ladies and interpreters. One of the books that I think we must not not talk about is this one called Unbroken, written by Nandika Nambi. It was the winner of the Hindu Young World Good Books Award and the Crossword Book Award in 2018, and rightfully so. It talks about a young lady on the cusp of life. It tells the story of a young lady on the cusp of life. She is just getting ready to go to med school, when one of the days, with her father, when she's driving somewhere, they meet with an accident. And what happens to the young protagonist of this book? She is completely disabled and confined to a wheelchair. And one of the things that Meenu said as part of her conversation is that most books on disability seem to want to portray them as heroic people, or people who have done things despite the odds. While, as she said, they're people with the same emotions, same feelings, the same desires that all of us have. And in this one, the protagonist is so upset and so kind of annoyed about what has happened to her life, that she just decides that she is going to be completely nasty to her family and the world around her. This is because she feels like she's in a prison. She has to be in the wheelchair, and for her, that wheelchair feels like a prison, and there's nowhere to escape. It's really one of those few books, again, meant for 13 plus year olds, young adults, that portrays a character in all her emotion, showcasing all her emotions, which are not necessarily only positive or heroic emotions. There are emotions of despair, anger, against people, against your own fate. And this one, though, showcasing that, but something happens, like it does often in life, that makes her perhaps change the way that she is viewing her own life. It's a lovely book about her, how a family comes in support of their own child, never mind even if she has decided to be downright irritating and annoying to them. This one, published by Duckbill, is priced at 325 rupees, and indeed rightfully the winner of many acclaimed awards. We do have several other books that we meant to recommend in the course of this bazaar, but I'm afraid I think we have pretty much run out of time to recommend books. Please do check out our website, www.funkyrainbow.com. Do go to the bazaar tab, click on the tab that says disability, and look at all the books. The blurbs are there. You can read the stories before you decide whether the book suits your reading requirement or not. At the moment, there is a lovely discount offer going on, which is called the 2020 offer. If you pick up books over 2,000 rupees, you are eligible for a 20% discount. And there are lovely books that we have showcased in this bazaar and across various bazaars. So do consider picking them up if you feel that your children would enjoy reading them, or you would enjoy reading them as well. With this, we will move to back to our other sign language interpreter, before we just go into a short segment of new arrivals at Funky Rainbow. Thank you, Riya, and we would like to ask Manisha to come on screen. Hi, Manisha. We are just absolutely in the last segment of our show. And we are going to show you a clutch of new books that have come into us. These have all come in only in the last 2 3 days. So we are going to have to read it. Archana Atri saying, Funky's extremely special session, this one. Thank you so much. I applaud you. We applaud you right back. You have done such spectacular work of setting up an inclusive book club, and we really hope we're inspired by those videos, where you show us what work you're doing to take these books to children, never mind what their abilities. Sunila Kulkarni saying, thank you, Vidya and team FR and Riya and Manisha. Thank you, Sunila, for being ever and our supporter. So, quickly, the new arrivals. Shall I start off with them, Sham? Because there's a little video that will come up. Quickly want to recommend these new arrivals. This one from Juggernaut, called The Hungry Little Sky Monster, written by Rohini Nilekani and illustrated by Megha Punetar. It's about it's a story. It's a story written in poem form, and it's about why does the moon get so small and why does it get so big? Could there be a monster up in the sky who's waiting, who is probably gobbling it up? A lovely little picture book that works for 2+ year olds or maybe 3+ year olds. You can read it out to kids when they are as young as 3, and they can read it themselves when they are 5. The next picture book too, from Juggernaut, called The Big Thoughts of Little Love, written by celebrity director Karan Johar and illustrated by celebrity illustrator Priya Kurian. This one is a lovely story about about a pair of twins called Love and Kusha. It's an entertaining story about how they have the same colored hair, they have the same kind of eyes, they're as tall as each other. In fact, the blurb so nicely says even their poo poo is the same. But love is a boy and Kusha is a girl, and sometimes things happen that make love very, very confused. It's quite a wonderful story, again meant for 2 to 5 year olds. Jyoti Narayan saying, big shout out to Manisha and Riya to keep up with Vidya's enthusiasm and speed. Thank you so much. Really, that has to be a big round of applause to go out to the young ladies who indeed have kept pace so well. This one, meant for 2 to 5 year olds, again, to be read out to them when they are younger, and to be read out, to be read on their own when they are older. Very, very dear friends, new books, and we haven't read them yet. So, you know what the weekend comprises at Funky Rainbow. This is the lovely writer illustrator Ashok Rajagopalan's Gulgul series, The Adventures of Gulgul series. And I just love the titles of the book: Gulgul in Jangalu, Gulgul in Parapara, Gulgul in Seesaw Gara. My God, I can't wait to read these wonderful books that are meant for middle grade readers, 8+ year olds, written and illustrated by Ashok Rajagopalan. As you can see, really, large text and illustrations, making this a lovely series. Or we will tell you in a subsequent bazaar how much we enjoyed reading these books. 2 young adult ones on our shelves: Loki Takes Guard, written by Menaka Raman. I just love it how many cricket stories are coming out these days of girls playing cricket. Menaka Raman, has some lovely picture books from Pratham, has a great sense of humor. So I'm assuming this is going to be like a witty and a quick paced read about Loki, about a young girl called Loki and her coming of age story as a girl who's determined to play cricket. This one meant for 12+ year olds, published by Speaking Tiger and priced at 299 rupees. Nomad's Land by that Doyen writer for children and young adults, Paro Anand, again meant for 12 plus year olds. This one is a story that goes back to Paro's favorite, which I think is probably Paro's favorite place in the country, Kashmir. It tells the story of two friends, and we're going to be reading, between us, all these stories this weekend to showcase them in bazaars that in subsequent bazaars that come up. These are some of the new arrivals on our shelves, and we will say a big hello to several other friends who have been with us in the course of these 2 hours. Kavita Kanmani, who has become now the principal of the Endeavor School. How lovely to connect with you, Kavita, and we're so glad that you were there at this bazaar. Dolly Raja, Madhavi Nair, Shiva Kumar, Sakshi Bruta, Ritika Singh, Amita Savant Kubal, Shobana Joshi, Muttu Rajeshwari Shankar, Sandra and Ryan Oberoi. Big shout out going out to you from Harmony. Payal Dhar, what a pleasure to have you here at the bazaar. We don't have copies of Payal Dhar's outstanding picture book called A Helping Hand, but fortunately it's available to read on Storyweaver, which is the Pratham Books digital website, www.storyweaver.org. Payal's excellent book on being a new girl at school, written in an epistolary fashion, is one of the nicest one on inclusion that I have, read in recent times. Thank you so much, Payal Dhar, for joining us. Sheba Abidi, what a pleasure. We've heard so much about your brother from Muttama, and, we are so glad that he and you have done the things that you have done to make our world so much more of an inclusive place. We can only follow in those wonderful footsteps that in the paths that you have charted well ahead of us. Thank you for joining us, Sheba Abidi. Amrita Goswami, Reshu Diwan, Dipali Taneja, A.S. Narayanan, who joins us from the National Association of the Deaf, Book Pickle, Ashwangi Bhatt, Leela VR, Selza Narona, Vibha Vinayan, Mamta and Aarti, Gayatri Mambra, Wonderleaf Club, Anurag, Jane D'Souza, Deepa Balsavar, Sneha, Nigar Rao, Amanjot Kaur, Nachi Kul, and Suni Anup. What a pleasure that so many of you joining us at the Disabling Differences Bazaar. Folks, we have so many books, so many more that need to be written, but let us put our hands, heads, and hearts together to make our world a much more inclusive and a much more beautiful space. Thank you so much once again for joining us at this bazaar. We will see you again next Saturday with another bazaar. And before we go, again, a big, big shout out to our lovely ISL interpreters for being with us for 2.5 hours today and interpreting this show for different audiences. Thank you, ladies. You should teach me how to say thank you. How do I say thank you to you in ISL? This way? That there's a big this going out to all of you, to both of you, and to DEOC for supporting us in this endeavor to make the show more inclusive. Bye-bye. Okay, this is clapping, and everybody at Funky Rainbow clapping for all of you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, and we'll see you next week.